Important topic tonight, safeguarding. Community Matters is here to ask questions that matter to our community life. Peterborough is one of the most diverse communities in the country, and I guess we have our fair share of problems and challenges that would come under the banner of safeguarding. Now, February has been Safeguarding Awareness Month, so Community Matters are delighted to welcome Dr. Russell Wate to the show. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Russell, you come with a distinguished career in the police service, holding the Queen's Police Medal, and in the police service you were the United Kingdom lead for investigating child deaths. You played a key role in how the law can be used to learn from and prevent future child deaths. And this was the first complete countrywide process for investigating children dying in the world. You've also served at national level for the British government and the Association of Chief Police Officers, helping to shape policy and maintaining standards about safeguarding children. You've received 14 commendations from judges and senior officers for investigations you've been in charge of. And you have a doctorate in investigating child deaths. And now you are the independent chair of the Safeguarding Partnership for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So we're really pleased that you've found the time to come and talk to us about safeguarding. So let's get to that heart of our topic tonight. Why should we be concerned about safeguarding?
No, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me along, especially in February when we are focusing across Peterborough and wider into Cambridgeshire on safeguarding and making it everybody's business. Now, safeguarding in its broadest terms is making sure that for children and young people that they are kept safe from harms that are caused to them by others, but also harms that and risks that they may get themselves into. And of course adults where others may harm them. So safeguarding is quite a broad term across all aspects of safeguarding, whether that's harms from sexual abuse, domestic abuse, being neglected or emotionally abused. So it's a broad thing, but something that we're really passionate about, that we as a community, so the professionals can't do it all themselves, and only with the help of communities can they try and make a difference.
Now, safeguarding isn't only about children, but we can hardly call ourselves a civilised society if our children cannot grow up safe from harm. So what's the scale of the problem?
So the scale of the problem in terms of a national problem, rather than giving some very localised figures, is that we're talking about 700,000 children, but there are best part of 14 million children in this country will at some time during the next 12 months need some sort of input. And safeguarding in its broadest terms, that doesn't mean to say that they are in need of child protection, so they're at significant harm, but they might just need some help with what they're doing. So that might be they're struggling at school, and for various reasons, it might be about bullying, and they just need some help in order to keep them safe. So it's quite a broad term. Sounds a large number, but it's not as large as that, and we just strive to keep that number down if you can.
Of course, and I appreciate that we can't go into details of local situations that are sensitive.
Yes.
But even so, 700,000 does sound a large number, and across the whole range of harm, from relatively minor harm to very serious cases.
Yeah, absolutely. To you mentioned very kind. You'd obviously done some research into my background, that investigating child deaths and child homicides in particular was one of the specialisms. Still something that I still train all around the country, and in fact all over the world, in relation to that's the worst end of the harm, where they've been killed unlawfully. But as you say, it might be a smaller level harm. One of the biggest problems locally, but same nationally, is neglect. So children being neglected, and that could be not just the grubby child. You think, oh, they haven't got, they haven't washed or they're not clean. It's wider than that. It's a situation where maybe that the housing isn't good enough for them. Their parents might be living in poverty, so they don't have the day-to-day things that we would expect our children and you would expect, the average child to have. That's not to say that anybody that lives in poverty would neglect their child, but it's a risk that we must realise and think about for our children if they are neglected and things like that.
Speaking as a school governor myself, I'm incredibly impressed with the attention that the teaching staff pay to the welfare of children, and ensuring that any possible signs of abuse or neglect are investigated. And they seem to have very close links with other authorities, such as the local council and the police.
Yeah, so we link in very, very closely with all of the schools in our area. So in Peterborough, we've got a very good relationship with secondary schools, and also in particular the primary schools. So we've got representatives for both secondary and primary schools on the safeguarding board representing the schools. We do lots of training and input with the dedicated safeguarding leads in each school. And absolutely, I'm with you. I was a school governor for 13 years myself, but I just see the work that they do in looking after their children in its wider sense, not just when they're doing any academic work, but in terms of safeguarding. They do a brilliant job, and I've never had an occasion where I say, well, actually, they haven't done their work effectively to safeguard their children. No, we're very lucky. I worked in other areas and similarly lucky, but we're lucky that we've got such great teachers who do care about their children, which are our children in our community.
Bringing in other parts of support agencies, neglect can come about through homelessness. And I was hearing earlier today that Peterborough have managed to overcome the blight of sending families to stay in hotels and in distant towns from Peterborough. And that's really good news, because it's better for the children's education and for their welfare to be housed locally.
Yeah, certainly the City Council and the local authority here have worked really hard on homelessness, in particular with families, and making sure that they're all allocated somewhere to stay within the region, within the area. They have had to send them elsewhere because they didn't have enough beds locally, and they were filling up all of the bed and breakfasts and all of the places locally. But they've managed to develop that offer using their sort of City Council terminology, which is really, really good. And that's great for the children, because if you've got an address or somewhere to live, you can bring in other services. So you can bring in services like health services. They can register with a GP. If you are homeless, you struggle to do that because you haven't got an address to hang your hat, so to speak.
Yes. And of course the other agency which seems at the moment to have a growing need to support society is Food Bank. Food Bank is very useful. So a church I go to, we have a food bank working out of there, and I was surprised at about how many people use it. But they do, and I often see people that come into the food bank how essential that food is for them. So I'd encourage anybody to donate to food bank when they are collecting food, because it really is used and it really is appreciated, and it makes a difference. And in that essence, we're talking about neglect. If you're giving a child or their family some food so they're not going hungry, you're giving them a basic need that we should do. Sure. But now 700,000 children, a relatively small percentage, but how are the figures changing as recent years have gone by? Are we getting better or worse?
Well, in terms of child protection cases. So these are the serious cases. Significant harm is called as child protection. Those figures are going up locally. In terms of being a looked after child, so child in care, those figures are going up locally. Some of that we could say is down to identifying the need and acting sooner and acting more responsibly and proactively. But yes, they are going up, but the population has gone up as well. And we got our census data, which is from 2011, and here we are in 2019, and that's what does cause us an issue, because the child population here in Peterborough is much, much bigger than what it was in 2011. Yeah, absolutely, they are going up. I think everybody's alive to that. Me personally, as an independent chair, I'm quite happy. And I haven't got a problem that they're going up, because I know then that those children are being looked at and everything. They'll have a care plan to say, what do we need to do to keep this child safe from being at significant harm, or we feel that we need to take them into the care of the council. What can we do in order to make their growing up better? I think that's a good thing. What I think is a bad thing is if they say to them, not so much child in care but child protection, is that they say that actually we think all those risks have gone away, so they take them off that child protection plan, and 6 months, 12 months later they're back on it. That's the measure that I would worry about. Another measure I'd worry about is if they're on it for a long while. That means that we're not dealing with the risks that are against those children. So I'm pleased to say that those sort of two figures, so re-referrals onto child protection plans and length of time on a child protection plan, they've gone down. So as an indicator to me to say, well, are we doing it right? I think we are.
So something about consistency and a smooth transition from one status into another, and that not jumping back and forth.
Yeah, so the step down, step up process is what professionals call it. Absolutely, is that you're not 1 minute in terms of needing lots of risk. You've got lots of risk, and so you need to put a child protection plan in, and then oh no, that risk's gone away, taking that off again, and then 6 months later, well, actually, we think we should put them back on there, or the care plan's not working because they're on it for years and think, well, that risk hasn't gone away. Those are the figures that worry me, and those have gone down.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, for general public, we understand safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. Yeah. But how can a member of the public take that responsibility if they see something that they're not comfortable with, they're not happy about? Is it interfering in a parent's responsibility who might smack a child or shout at them in some way, or if they see a child who appears to be unkempt and dirty and undressed, not well dressed? What can a member of the public do? It's very difficult to think, well, you're intervening into somebody's life. It's picking the right occasion. So when you feel actually that isn't right and something needs to be done. So it could be a child in school. So you might be taking your child to school and you pick up that this other child is looking grubby, or that that doesn't look like they're eating, or you find out that they're eating out the bins or whatever. You should be telling the school that. You should be telling a professional that actually as a parent, I've got concerns about this child, and then let the professional go on and do the work. I often say, and as you mentioned, I was a police officer many years, is that if there's a fight that goes on, and I remember a homicide of a young lad that I dealt with, and there was a lot of people saw him lying there, having been in a fight, and walked by. And what my view to them is not to get involved in the fight, because the guy doing the fighting, the offender, was a very violent person. So not put yourself at risk, but ring up somebody that can, whose job it is. So call the police or call an ambulance, and their job is to intervene, to do that. So that's what I say to members of the public is,
don't go and tackle people yourself. You might want to, but share it with a professional who we as a society pay in order to do that. And there's lots of phone numbers and emails, addresses that you can do that, or it's somebody you know. So it might be the teacher, for example, might be your local GP, or it might be a social worker or the local authority, or a police officer.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I suppose another of the worries for somebody who observes something like this, it could be a neighbour's family,
Yes.
or it could be distant family that live in another street or another part of town, and they're observing something, but they're worried because once you get the authorities involved, children will be taken away, put into care, people will be prosecuted, and they fear for the outcome of all of that.
Yeah. There's a balance involved in what you said, and there are two ways to look at this. But if we look at it on one side, is that we should intervene if you think there is something going wrong, and we should tell those professionals that we feel there's something going wrong. And I can give you so much evidence of different cases that I've dealt with, or different cases in the media, where just somebody might have saved that person's life if they'd rung up earlier. Because I carry out domestic homicide reviews all around the country, and people say, well, I knew something was going on, including professionals, including GPs and social workers, police officers, and they ring up, and when you go to see them after, I knew something was going on, but I wanted to ring, but I didn't want to interfere. So my encouragement is that ring a professional. Now, the worry is that they'd be prosecuted. The worry is that they'd be taken into care. The last thing that the local authority want to do is take a child out of their family. There's absolutely no doubt the best place for a child to grow up is within their family, but a family that loves them and takes care of them and looks after them. And that family might just need a little bit of support, and that's what they want to do. They don't want to take that child into care. That's the last thing that they want to do. So, and prosecution isn't, the police are in a different place to where they were now. Certainly when I was a young police officer, prosecutions were the thing, but sometimes it's actually making the problem go away is what you should really be doing, because that stops you having another 10 calls for service. The demand goes down, and then that's the same result. But sometimes prosecution is the way. So we can't step away from that. Sometimes you do need to ring up, and you do need to know it's going to be a court case. You do need to stand up and be counted, so to speak. But the majority of cases, they just want to help. And if they don't know about it, they can't do anything about it. So.
And is there somewhere you can report, you mentioned the schools, but something equivalent to Crime Stoppers?
Yeah, there is. If you believe a child is being abused, for children, same with adults, there is a phone line that you can call in to say that we've got these concerns. And those numbers are available on the Safeguarding Board website. So you put in Peterborough, Cambridgeshire, or Peterborough Safeguarding, you will come up with our website. And
there'll be a confidential phone line?
Yes, yeah.
Wonderful, that's good to know. And I'm hoping we can carry that detail, that information on Salaam Radio's website as well.
Okay, yes.
And link that too. Well, now, I asked if things were getting better or worse, but in recent years we've had the internet. And the internet gives many more people much more access to material that, if they view it, could be considered to be a crime in itself, or it could be considered to be the start of a slippery slope.
Yeah.
So has the internet made things worse?
Oh, absolutely. The volume of work generated through the internet, the volume of harms through the internet is absolutely beyond belief. So make no mistake that the use of the internet, social media, so bullying. So bullying, when I grew up, you know, it was somebody bullying you to your face or waiting around the corner. When you went home, that bullying had stopped, as long as it wasn't within your family, say it was school bullying. Now it goes on, it can go on 24/7 because they're getting messages through social media all the time. So yes, absolutely. I'd say it's not a help. Yes, it's very useful for people, but in terms of if you want to be an abuser, it really helps you to be an abuser.
And if you're finding the temptation has arisen because internet access appears to be so very private and in one's own home,
yes.
Nobody else can see, you don't have to go into a shop to buy a magazine, but that then leads you at the start of a slippery slope. But you don't want to ask for help because you might be admitting to something that labels you.
Yeah, no, there are charities,
Okay.
And we're involved in them. You can get access to that on our website as well. Is that if you think that you might be about to abuse, now if you have abused, I'm sorry that you might end up being prosecuted and labelled. But if you haven't, and there are many people that are fighting. Or might be fighting that temptation, as you called it. There are charities set up, counselling groups set up that can talk you through that before you get down that slippery slope, as you called it. So that's really important to think through that. I can't say that if they abuse somebody, they ring up, they're not going to get prosecuted because that's that could happen.
Yeah.
But if you haven't done that, get a hold of this and try and speak to somebody to say, I've got these. You won't be labelled because you haven't been an abuser. In fact, actually, you've been quite brave to come forward and saying, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But the temptation's actually, the access to it's so great. I feel I'm being sent down that road. There are people that might talk you through that and give you strategies in order to cope with that temptation.
So it is possible to come away from that potential addiction, just as it is with addiction to substance abuse or to gambling.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. Exactly the same sort of strategies you use. I think you realise you're never clear.
Yeah.
You're never not an alcoholic. You're never not a gambler. But you can use some strategies in order not to do that. Yeah.
Now, we've mentioned that you're the independent chair of the Peterborough-Cambridgeshire Safeguarding Board.
Yeah.
What is the board?
Yeah, so what we have to do through a statutory process, so the government and the law says that every area, so Peterborough, has to have a Safeguarding Children Board and have a Safeguarding Adult Board. So I'll explain what they do in a moment. But what we've done locally is joined with Cambridgeshire. So Cambridgeshire and Peterborough have a joint safeguarding partnership that looks at children and adults as an executive board, and then it has an arm that looks at adult safeguarding and children's safeguarding. So on these boards, so what does it do? It combines all of the local agencies, so the local authority. So we'll have the Director of Children's Services, the Service Director for Children's Services on the safeguarding board, an assistant chief constable or the detective superintendent from the police, and then also the clinical commissioning group will have their designated doctors and nurses and their officers and health trusts at the hospital, plus other agencies. So we mentioned schools earlier. So what our job is to do is all to come together in order to look at what the issues are and see what we can do in order to help. And some of that is to write policy, to write guidance, to issue resources. Some of that is to do training. And there's a very, very healthy training package on all aspects of safeguarding. Excuse me. So that's what the board do in essence. Another thing they do is challenge each other. So if they feel that somebody's not doing a good job, they challenge them to say you should be doing better, so to speak.
And is there enough money to do the work that you would like to be done?
Yes, the board is funded, so it has some full-time members of staff as well as me as like a contractor. So they're funded. The training program's fully funded. You obviously want, the more money you get, the more work you could do.
Yeah.
So we do things like multi-agency audits. So we look at 10 cases and say, what can we learn from these cases? But we, so in essence, you always want more money so that you can think we'll do some projects and things. But we are looked after by our local authority, the police, and our health authorities that help us to do what we do currently.
So there is enough resource to do the work that you feel is essential?
Yes, I'd say we're doing the essential bits, yeah. And more. Okay. So Ofsted recently inspected the local authority here, saw that they were good, but thought that the board was good as well.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, now we're heading for a short break. Do stay tuned, because after the break, Community Matters will continue our fascinating and important discussion with Dr. Russell Wate on safeguarding. Just see you in a few minutes.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "The best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it." Sponsor a hifz off from the Penny Appeal for just 70 pence a day to teach them to recite the Holy Quran. Call 03000 11 11 11 or visit www.pennyappeal.org. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
Peterborough just got a whole lot tastier. Five Lads Flame Grilled Peri Peri Chicken is now open. Bring your family and friends to Peterborough's first HMC meat-selling restaurant. We are experts in grilled chicken, lamb chops and gourmet lamb and beef burgers. Our healthy options include fresh salads and fresh grilled vegetables. Fresh, clean and healthy grilled food with 4 different flavours. Lemon and herb, medium, hot and extra hot. 5-star hygiene rating. Eat in, order and collect or order for delivery on Deliveroo. Follow 5 Lads Peterborough on Facebook and Instagram 5 Lads. 15 Cowgate, Peterborough, PE1 1LZ. Call 01733 56 22 87. Open 7 days a week, 12 to 11 p.m.
Almarad Tiles. With over 70 stores nationwide, we are now open in Peterborough. Up to 50% discount offers now on. Largest selection of tiles. Full bathroom suites from only £189. Paint, LED lighting, laminate flooring from only £7.99. Over 1,000 designs of wallpaper in stock. We have everything you need. Come and visit us at 193 Fengate, Peterborough, PE1 5BH, or call us on 01733 34 58 47. Almarad Tiles, now open.
Had a car accident or an accident at work? Accident specialists are experts in no-win, no-fee accident claims. Leave the hassle to us. Our multilingual settlement experts will manage the entire claims process on your behalf, with nothing to pay up front. We provide services such as credit hire, taxi vehicles, recovery, storage and much more. For full details on our range of services and a free consultation, call us on 01733 555 774 or visit our office at 249 Lincoln Road opposite the NatWest Bank. Accident Specialists. Start your successful claim today.
Feel like some great tasting chicken tonight? Great meal deals, wraps, burgers and sides. We've got it all at Chicken Palace. Call and collect at 302 Lincoln Road on 01733 702 447 or 8 Park Road on 01733 34 3750. Chicken Palace, open 11 a.m. till late.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salaam Radio.
And welcome back to Community Matters. This is Adrian Holdstock broadcasting on Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and online at salamradio.co.uk. Welcome back also to Dr. Russell Wate, the Independent Chair of the Safeguarding Partnership for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Another aspect of safeguarding concerns domestic abuse. A headline in The Independent yesterday reads, "Abuse victims left to slip into homelessness and substance abuse by system meant to help them. Far too many survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse are being left to endure traumatic and extremely difficult lives. And the evidence comes from the National Commission on Domestic and Sexual Violence and Multiple Disadvantage." So, Russell, how serious is domestic violence?
Oh yes, absolutely. Domestic abuse, A to the adult that is the victim of the domestic abuse, and the definition actually goes from 16, so 16 and over, but also any children that are growing up in a domestic abuse home, they absolutely are emotionally abused by what they see, sometimes physically abused. So it is a huge problem. I think they say that it costs the country 40 billion a year.
Wow.
Is the impact of domestic abuse on the economy. So we're talking about a major problem.
How do we find out about domestic abuse?
Well, there's no doubt domestic abuse goes on all around us, really, and it's in homes that you wouldn't think that is happening, but it is happening, and it is in those homes that you do know that it's happening. So it's the biggest call on police services is to incidents of domestic abuse, and one of the encouragements is that if you do see domestic abuse happening, you should be making that call that we were talking about earlier. And domestic abuse isn't just that physical violence. It could involve a thing called coercive or controlling behaviour, and that's where they've made it such that that the victim has no chance of making any independent choices. They are, coerced or controlled so much that they don't have an independent life of their own, including financially, but also their social group, their families, they become isolated from. And it's being alive and aware of that. So I dealt with a case as a domestic homicide review author just outside of Peterborough in Spalding, where a lady called Claire and Hart and her daughter Charlotte Hart were murdered by her husband, the father. He shot them and shot himself dead. And both the sons, Luke and Ryan Hart, I've been working with, and they will describe that growing up, they lived in this coercive, controlling household, and they said they basically lived with a domestic terrorist. Nobody saw that from outside, and they didn't realise what they were living in. So it's really worth people thinking about. It's not just they see somebody with a black eye. Yes, if they see somebody with a black eye, they should do something. But it's also this wider coercive, controlling behaviour.
And you talk about involving the police. Are the police trained in the sensitivities of stepping into a family situation and finding out what's really going on?
Yeah, so the police nationally, but also very much locally, do a lot of training on domestic abuse. It's a big priority of theirs to do what they can. The police commissioner here locally with the local authority commission domestic abuse victim services. So for example, one of the things that they've done over the last 2 years have put some counselling in for children that might be subject to domestic abuse, and I think that funding's ongoing for at least another 12 months. So that they are very, very on the front foot and very aware that domestic abuse is such an issue here in Peterborough. No different to elsewhere where I work, but we have to think about where we live, and certainly that's something that is a priority and quite rightly should be a priority.
But of course in Peterborough we have, as like other parts of the country, we have a very mixed society, very diverse communities, different cultures that have different standards and thinking about standards of behaviour.
Yeah.
How do we take that into account?
Again, I have done domestic homicide reviews out of Peterborough, so a little bit in the Eastern European community. Alcohol's a big problem in domestic abuse, so that's one thing that we should be trying to tackle, alcohol. But getting to the point that you're really making, in some cultures and some societies, is that we deal with it within the family. To take an issue outside of the family is actually going against the family. It's a dishonour to the family. And what we've got to get to the stage is that, no, it's not a dishonour, and you must come forward and you must say, well, whatever happens, you need to make it stop. And what's the best way to make it stop is to get some professionals involved and not try and deal with it as a family. I do understand that the family situation, and we deal with it, and and you can do, and if that works, fine. But more often, in my experience, it doesn't work. So the odd occasion it does work, fine. But you do need to get professionals involved. And I dealt with a case where, and it was because of the children involved in this case. It was in a community that they dealt with everything themselves, and one of her older brothers, who actually was a school teacher, went to the police. No, he went back to the hospital and said that the fall down the stairs didn't happen like we said. It didn't happen like that, and you need to re-look at that. And they got the police and social worker involved, and they took the child in and treated him in hospital, and mum did get prosecuted.
Right.
However, she realised that it was for the child's good, it was for her good, it got her out of that situation that she was in. I have got examples like that one, that actually it does work and it does turn out fine. But you need to intervene, basically.
But it's not just the police, it's a multi-agency approach.
It is, yeah. So health services very much are involved. All of the voluntary sector, so it might be Women's Aid or it might be Refuge. Any of these voluntary sectors are really good. They're very professional. They know what to do to help a victim of domestic abuse. One of the big things that I really want to push forward in some of my work is that we have better perpetrator programs to stop them, because people often say, well, why didn't she leave? Why didn't she leave that situation? But actually, to leave that home, which is her home, to leave her family, her friends, maybe going to a refuge, which is often can work, it's safe for them, but it's a tough choice to leave everything that you've got and to walk away, but actually sometimes it's the right choice. But better to say, why didn't she leave? Why didn't he stop? Why didn't he stop? So what can we do to stop them abusing their wives, partners, or family members? So that's the thing that I'd like to do. And then also do a lot more work with our teenagers that are heading to be into adulthood, is that making sure that the awareness campaign is that domestic abuse is not the thing. It's not the way to treat. Proper relationship building is the key. And then maybe we can make a step change. It might be a generation change.
Surely.
But that's an ambition of mine, actually. So.
And that asking that question, well, why didn't they stop? And it's not just about holding a sword over their head of they're going to be prosecuted. It's about how can they be helped to change their behaviour.
Oh yes, absolutely. So we call them perpetrator programs, but think about perpetrator programs that you can put them on. But there are also other schemes that you could think about for them in order to say, why did they stop? So that really helps, and I think that's a good way forward.
Wonderful. We're just going to pause for a few seconds as we allow Islam prayers to come on to the air.
You're listening to Salaam Radio, and it's now time for Maghrib Azan. This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
And we have not sent you, O Muhammad, except as a mercy to the universe.
Oh Allah, send your peace on
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salaam Radio.
And coming to the final session on Community Matters tonight with me, Adrian Holdstock, and Dr. Russell Wate. We were talking about domestic abuse and domestic violence and the impact that that has, often on women, but also the secondary impact that then has on children. But I'm interested to know whether men also suffer from domestic abuse.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely. So actually the stats do say it's 2/3 women, 1/3 male. I think the reality is it's probably 80% women and 20% men. But not all men. You might think, well, that's in a same-sex relationship. Actually, it's also the gender, the woman on the man. That could be the case. And I dealt with a case where actually it was a sister, so it was a sibling, stabbed her brother to death. She got in. She was having drugs and alcohol and things, and her brother just happened to be there. So you think the common thing is husband and wife, or man and woman in a relationship. Actually, it's a lot wider than that. It could be same-sex relationships, and there are cases of that, and there are, in fact, some specific charity groups that look at same-sex or men as being the victims. So they are available. But if you look at the stats of homicides, so 7% of men are murdered in a domestic homicide, of all homicides. However, for women, that's over 50%. So they're more likely to be, a woman is more likely to be murdered by through a domestic situation, far more than a man.
But for men, there must be a greater sense of shame and fear about admitting that they're being bullied and harassed or abused in some way in the home.
I'd like to think that was the case, and I'd like to think that isn't the case now. I think we as a society are a lot more open, and I think men feel a lot more open. Maybe not in some areas around the country, but I'd say certainly in Peterborough that there, because people are a lot more open to hearing what they've got to say as victims. So yeah, no, I do get your point, but I actually think men do come forward, and we've got examples of men coming forward.
So let's come to our final topic in safeguarding tonight: self-neglect and hoarding. I'm intrigued by what that's going to reveal to us.
Okay, I wanted to use that as a topic. So this is purely in the adult world. So a child can't consent to being abused, can't consent to neglecting themselves. But once you get into adulthood, one of the things that we talk about is that if somebody's got mental capacity, so they can make the decisions for themselves. So making safeguarding personal for adults is that, what do they want? What do you as the adult want to happen to you? And unfortunately, what does happen at times is that they are self-neglecting themselves, so that they are living in a home where they are not feeding themselves, or they're not taking their medication, or they've got a pressure sore and they're not getting it treated. But professionals might say, but that's their choice. That's what they want to happen. And it's their choice, so we let them get on with it. But in terms of safeguarding, and not all cases of self-neglect is safeguarding, but a number could be, is that you have to think about, but you still have to protect them from themselves sometimes. And so that's why I wanted to talk about self-neglect. So if you think you're going into, I know you might be visiting a neighbour, or going to be a domiciliary care or whatever, somebody, and they may be self-neglected, so they may not be eating or doing looking after themselves, is to think, well, actually they'll get to a stage where they do cause themselves serious harm. And we've got examples of where they've died. And a good example for me was a young girl who felt that she had a lot of things going wrong with her. She hadn't, and people used to say, that's her choice to live like that. It really is her choice not to do this, and not to go into hospital, and not to get it treated, and not to go to somewhere that maybe be able to cater for her illness or perceived illnesses, and to really try and work at that, and to where there was illnesses. But people said, oh no, that's her choice. Unfortunately, that lady died. A young lady died through for various reasons. Now, I think, well, actually, we as a society, professionals, have to intervene at some times, and we have got a process that it's a multi-agency meeting. We'll look at so meeting around the patient. We'll look at to think that multidisciplinary meeting would be the right people to think, well, actually, what can we do in order to convince them that they need to go to get treatment now, or they need to go into hospital now. And it's all easy to say, but they've got capacity and their decision is not to. And yes, we should honour that, but there will come a time when that balance tips. And so that's a good example that I know personally where I thought, well, actually, maybe we should have intervened earlier. And I think everybody would say that. And you can intervene and take them to the Court of Protection. There is a thing called deprivation of liberty services, but that's when they haven't got capacity, and that gives capacity to the state or the local authority.
I suppose, well, one experience I've had in this area is with rough sleepers who, if they appear to be persistent in their rough sleeping, then it's because that they've created for themselves a mental view of not wanting to take responsibility in other aspects of their life, so all that they're left with is rough sleeping, and that becomes normal for them.
Yeah, and to be fair, rough sleeping is a safeguarding issue because they're out on the streets all weathers. We've had some very cold weather, maybe not getting the food that they deserve. So this is slightly different to homelessness. Rough sleeping is more of a choice. And one of the reasons that rough sleepers don't want to go, because I know that the local authority and other organisations, housing organisations, churches are getting involved, is that we can provide them a home, is that they've got themselves into that mindset. Sometimes they're taking alcohol, they're taking drugs, and if they go to some of these hostels, that there is a place for them, they very much are told that you can't drink, you can't have alcohol, you can't have drugs here, you have to adhere to our rules, so that's lights out at whatever time.
You can't bring a pet.
Yes, so there are lots of reasons that why we have entrenched rough sleepers, and what can we do? How can we be more flexible for them? But it's really important that we know who our rough sleepers are. So I mentioned earlier about health. So if you are a rough sleeper, you're going to struggle to get any benefits for you because you haven't got an address. You're going to struggle to get a GP or to have primary care services because you haven't got an address. So it's really important that we try and break the entrenched rough sleeping. And I know there's lots of things that the local authority and their partners and others are trying to do. And I think they say we've got about 30 entrenched rough sleepers in Peterborough. So quite a number, but not as many as some people might think when they walk around town.
No, indeed.
Or around the city.
Another area of life is towards the end of life, where I've encountered the need for safeguarding intervention. And what has impressed me is the sensitivity with which the professionals have offered support and help, and always treated the individual with great dignity and given them as much as possible their choice of what they would like to live, as long as they can live independently or with support or in a care home that is suitable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've done a lot of work as a board and as the local authority have, as of the health authorities and our care providers in the city, to make sure that those decisions are helping to be made. So you get the conversation earlier, and what would you want? End of life discussions, we call it. Don't leave it to right to the end. Do that earlier. And a lot of people, in my experience, would like to be in their own home, and it's making sure that if they're in their own home, they get the support that they need. If they're in a care home, make sure it's the care home that they feel that is the right one for them. And it's not just them, it's their families as well. And making sure you give the reassurance to the families is that this is what your mum or dad or grandpa or grandma, this is what they want, and we're helping them to do that, and we need your help and support in order for us to do that. We didn't talk about hoarding, so can I just, if I've got a little bit, why did I want to talk about hoarding? Now, so hoarding, people, I've been driving by a neighbour's house last summer, and they were away, a very elderly couple, but they were away at another address, and there were 16 skips there over a period of time, clearing them out because you couldn't get in the door and you could get rats, and it's not safe. So think about hoarding. Yes, it's a choice, but hoarding can be a safeguarding issue. Imagine if there's a fire, and we've got examples through hoarding is that they couldn't get out of the home when there was a fire. So that's why if you think somebody's hoarding, try and talk them out of getting rid of those newspapers or things that the boxes that they've got everywhere, to think about that. So.
And don't be afraid of asking for professional help for that person.
Absolutely. So.
Wonderful. We've come to the end of our time. Russell Wate, thank you so very much for sharing your insights into your work in safeguarding. That's all we have time for tonight on Community Matters. We are the community that matters wherever we are. Let's be a community that lives in peace, harmony, and safe from harm.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this.